Hello everyone. If you are building even the most simple website or a product today, the bare minimum feature for that product or website is going to be a logging in feature. That is, if a user comes to your website, they should be able to log in to your website. Now, there are lots of hassles when you build this feature. The biggest hassle is how do you encrypt and store your passwords, the customer's password in your backend system. Sure, there are lots of good practices and libraries which you can use in your backend system. But again, it's a big hassle. What if you don't do things properly? What if you make one or two mistake due to which any bad person can steal your passwords and then it just ruins the reputation of your company? So many people don't even want to get into the hassle of storing passwords, even though they want the feature of logging in. So what do? They put the onus of storing passwords and managing the passwords with bigger companies like Google or Apple or Microsoft, etc. So you would have seen lots of websites or e-commerce platforms wherever you log in that now there is a trend of passwordless authentication. That is, you don't have any passwords and yet you are able to log in. So one such passwordless authentication I'm going to discuss today is logging in with Google. So what I'll talk about today is that how do you build this and what are the things needed here. So when you go to any website, you will see sign in with Google button, and then you will also see the auto sign in button sort of thing. So I'll talk how to build that and what are the bare minimum things required to build it. So when I was actually going through multiple docs and the tutorials, the problem was that it was a little hard to wrap my head around things because many of those particular tutorials, they were sort of mingling lots of things. So here what I'll do is that I'll talk about what are the things which can be done, what are the things which cannot be done, and how do you get yourself started overall. So the first and the foremost important thing is that this particular feature, the logging in with Google, it has two flows. So today I'm going to talk about the flow which is only for authentication. I'm not going to talk about the authorization here. That is, still the onus of managing the session and logout and session expiry and TTL and all those things are on you. So here the only thing which most of the common flows consists of is how do you just log in to your website without a password, but then managing the session is on you. So you will put some session ID and all those things, that is still on you. But here the simplest flow which is there is that only the login part, that is, you will be redirected to go Google and then you will be redirected back, and then the the authentication will be done, but we'll not talk about the authorization. I also have a code base for the same thing, so you can look out. And there is just one more important thing which I want to talk about is the number of things and the number of components which are needed to run your login with Google. So when you see lots of tutorial, they mix lot of things. So here there are three things which you need whenever you build your login with Google thing. So the first is of course the access to console.google, console.cloud.google.com. It's a free thing. For this particular feature, you can just go and create the needed stuffs. I'll talk what are those needed stuffs. The front end code. So the front end code, the backend engineers don't get afraid and don't get paranoid with the front end code. It's a very simple code, and in fact Google has the code generator stuff. So it's a very simple code, maybe 10-20 lines of code. That's much, that is what you have to learn. And it's a simple HTML code which you would have seen in even in your college. So it's a very simple, and you need to build one backend API. Now this backend API can be in any language. It can be in Java, Python, Node.js, etc. Now here is something which we need to understand is that many times point number 2 and point number 3 people mix together, and then what happens is that it just creates lots of confusion. So what I'll do is that I'll have a backend API written in Java. I'll use a Spring, but you can again use anything. The intent is just that it will contain a few controllers. That's the important thing. And then the front end code is of course in HTML and JavaScript. I have not used any CSS here, just to keep it very simple, and the cloud.google.com thing. So this is the overall idea which we need to, keep in mind, and these are the things we'll create. Now, how does the overall flow would look like is that I have put the same link in my GitHub, and I'll put the link in the description as well. That first, when you go to your website, you will be redirected to accounts.google.com. There you will enter your credentials. Then what will happen is that when you enter your credentials or you log into google.com, then you will be redirected to your backend system. So this is the flow which I'm going to discuss today, which is a redirection or the refresh flow. That is, you will be redirected to your backend. Then there you will verify whether the redirection is correct or not. So nobody can hack into your backend, right? So that's why the redirection to backend is important, and the verification that whether the token is correct or not, and all those things, the verification always needs to be done in the backend. And then there will be a login success page, which will be the front end code. So there will be total, one redirection to accounts.google.com, second will be on your backend system, and the third will be the login success. So there will be bunch of redirections which needs to be catered, and we'll talk about all of those one by one. There is other simpler approach, that's a single page login thing. Many websites you see that when you log in, the page doesn't even refresh. In the same page itself you log in. But I'll not discuss about that today. I'll focus mostly on this one, because the first one is more common. And in fact, when I was reading their doc, the Google's doc, they were recommending to use the first one more than the second one, but both the things are common. So I'll talk about the first one first, and then we'll talk about the second one. So the verification will do a bunch of verification, etc. Okay. So now let's go to the cloud.google.com, that console, the website, and talk about a few things. So this is a link which you can go through and set up things for yourself, and the doc is quite comprehensive and very well written. So there are two flows, authentication and authorization. Today we are just talking about the authentication, which means that we are not going to talk about the session managements and all those complex stuffs. So this is how it is, that when you go to this overview page, you have bunch of things, whatever things I talked about, and integration considerations, that what are the things it supports. So basically, single page refresh it supports, and the other is the redirection flow. I'm going to cover the redirection flow because it's simpler to understand also. So, and the supported browsers and all those things are there. The important thing which they have mentioned here, I think in this page or one of the pages, is that yeah, this flow is only for the login, not for the session management, etc. For session management you have a different flow. So now here you can actually, what you need is this library in the front end code to code the front end, and then you can even generate the code for yourself, the front end code here. So this is the overall documentation which you can go through and understand how things work. Now, let's start with all the three things one by one. That is, first let's go to the cloud Google website and set up a few things. Then we'll set up the HTML, and then we'll set up the backend APIs. So you can go to this URL, cloud dot like the console.cloud.google.com, and then here you click on these three bars, and then click on APIs and services, and then click on credentials. So you will land up in this page. Before that, you might even have to create a project. So even that you can check online how to create a project, but that is very simple. You click on new project and you can create it. When you reach here, you need to create a OAuth 2 client ID. So for that, actually I created one. It's a very simple, the way you create it by clicking on create credential. So I have done that order already. So when you reach here, you just need a client ID that will be generated for you, and the client secret. You don't need client secret for this flow, so that's okay. And don't worry, I'll delete this app after the video, so the client secret will not be of any use anyway. And you need a few things. You need a JavaScript origins, basically the website on which you run your app. So it could be localhost 8080 or your website, something ecommerce.com, etc. So that's the place from where the login process will start. So that's why it's called as JavaScript origin. That is the place from where the login will start and the place where the front end will be located. And this is the redirection URL. That's the place where the redirection will happen. So remember, I talked about the redirection. That's the flow here, that the verify the backend code, that's backend redirection. So that's about the redirection, that where the redirection will happen. So it will be the backend code actually, and this the above one will be the front end code. And yeah, we can remove 8081, we don't need it. So everything is on 8080. So that's where I'll run it. And also when you are running things on local, you need to include both. So for experimentation purpose, whenever you run things, you need to include http localhost as well as http localhost colon 8080. So that's something which you need to be careful of when you build things on local. But for your public websites, it's not needed, only the domain name will be sufficient. So here my front end code and the back end code both are in the same origin. And yeah, you can do that. It's very simple. So when you do that, you click on save, you save this client ID, which will be important, and you copy it and keep it with yourself. There is OAuth consent screen where you can enter a few of the details, like the what will be the consent screen show like when the pop-up comes. So when you click here, this is how the login page shows up. So there will be a few things which you need. So here the only thing needed is the app name and the email address, nothing else, and the developer contact. You don't need to fill any scope or anything, just keep it default, that is, empty. Don't fill it with anything else, otherwise it will just create, more permission flow, and then we don't need that. We just need login with Google. We don't need personal information about the person. We just need a basic information, that is, something like name, email address, etc. So those details are anyway available, so we don't have to worry about them. And then you click on next, 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 and you save it. So that's a simple thing you need to do, nothing much here. And the most important thing is the credentials part, where we have created the credential and we copied the client ID. So you copy the client ID, you go here, and now we just need to generate the front end code. So there are three things. One is set up in the Google Cloud, the second is the front end code, and the third is the back end code. So today what we are going to talk about is a redirection flow, where there will be a lot of refreshes. So that's the HTML code flow, that's the generate HTML code. So here I'll just paste a client ID here, and then the login URI, that what will be the login URI where I'll be redirected. So what I have done is that I have already written a code, or I'm planning to write a code in the backend. So the backend API, wherever this redirection will happen, this, so I need the endpoint of that here, so that there the redirection will happen. So I'm thinking to have a redirection or the backend API written in this way. So I need to implement a backend API in this way, and then I'll click on next. What do I need? I need both one tap login, that is the auto login button, which you have seen just now, this one, and I need the sign in button. So basically I need both the things. So what I'll do is that I'll click on both this and this, and then I'll just click on get code and it will generate the code for me. So this is the simple code which I need to copy, and this will be my front end code. So you see how simple this code is for all backend engineer. We just don't need to get afraid of the front end code. It's simple here. We just copy it. And what I have done is that I have a I have a Spring based project, and here the in the Spring based project you can have both HTML as well as the backend. So what I'm doing is that I am putting all the backend code here, the front end code here. So when a person goes to localhost colon 8080 slash HTML hyphen login, then they will see this HTML page. So this is simple to do. The way you do that is first of all, this project, let's not get scared with the project here. It's a simple Spring project, Maven based project. And in that Maven based project, the important thing is that if you import this theme life dependency, then in this resource folder, anything you put under public will be available directly in the localhost 8080. So if you are creating a Spring Boot project, then you just need to create a resource, and in public, and whatever you keep here, you can keep HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So those things will be directly available. So when you click on localhost colon 8080, so that's what is happening here. So if you come here, localhost colon 8080 slash html hyphen login dot html. So this is the same page which is there in my resources. So this is the property of the theme life. So you can, if you want, you can have a separate project, node.js project or anything. I don't care. The thing is, the more important thing is that you just need to host this HTML file somewhere, and you can paste it something like this. The important thing to notice here is the script. So this is a JavaScript library which is of Google, and this will be responsible for rendering and having the UI components. So it's important to use this library. Don't create your own UI components for login, because people trust the look and feel of the login page. So this is how the login buttons look like for Google. So the uniformity is there, and there are some of the configurations which you can do, and you can check out the Google's website, but use Google's library to generate these buttons. So that's the important part. And they generate this div, and you can have this divs. So one div is for auto login and the other div is for buttons. You just copy and paste it. So this is the front end being done. So now we are done with the Google Cloud, we are done with the front end, and now what we need to do is to have a backend. So backend, we need to implement this API. So we are done with the front end. Now we need to implement this API. So what I have done is that I have created a controller. So basically the controller, there is one more controller that I'll talk about later. But before that, this controller, which is HTML callback. So this, you will get a callback after the successful login. So whenever you get a callback using a post call. So this is something which is enforced by Google. You can't change it. So the signature of the callback should always look like this. So it will be a callback. The URL can be anything, but since we configured HTML hyphen callback, so basically home slash HTML callback. So since we configured our, the callback as this one, so the callback will come here. Basically, after the logging in, you will be redirected here. And here you need to validate two things. First is you need to validate the cookie, and the second is you need to validate the token. So both the things, the signature is predefined, so you can't do much here. So you will get a credential and you will get a token. Basically the cross-site script forgery token. So basically this is a cookie verification thing. So for the cookie, there are a bunch of predefined things you need to do. So you will get a cookie in the payload, and you will get a cookie in the browser cookie. So when you click on login with Google, a browser will generate a cookie for you, and there is a cookie which will be sent as a payload as well, the same cookie value. So you will compare both the cookie value from the payload which you get and the cookie from the browser. And if both the values are same, then only you will proceed further. So that's the first verification you will do when you are redirected. So it's important to do that, so that there is no man in the middle attack kind of thing which can happen. So it makes sure that the browser who has initiated the request, the redirection will happen to the same browser. So all those things are verified here. So that's the first validation which is done. And that's why it's important to have the same origin. Basically, everything is hosted on localhost colon 8080. So the front end, whatever cookies are there, they will be accessible here as well. And then you verify the session data. So you get some credentials in the callback. So here, the libraries which we are using is of Google. Again, I have imported this library in my project. This is the Google API client library. I have imported that library in my project, so I don't have to do much. Apart from this, there is not much here. It's a Spring Boot MVC project. So the important thing is this Google API client library, which I have imported. And here, what we'll do is that we'll verify a few things. So first is we'll create an object, and here I have the same client ID, whatever client ID we initially had. We have the same client ID here, and this is merely a signature that how do you verify. Then you call this method of verification. So what happens is that Google's library actually verifies by getting the public key of the same secret. but you don't have to worry much about it. The thing is that Google has already provided the library. I might actually zoom in a bit in future on this one, but the thing is we can verify the token here, and then if the token is verified, then you will not get null, but you will get the values. So basically you call the verify API, you get the ID token, and then you can get bunch of values from the payload itself. That is the decrypted credential, like the name, email, and lots of other things. You see, name, picture, user ID, locale, family name. So if you just need these information, then it's a very simple flow. The moment you need more information, like getting access to calendar, etc., then you might need more details. So what I'm doing here, I just have a Pojo here. That's a plain class, session data class, where I'll keep some of the information. So here it's not much. So if we go to this, you know, method verify token, so here I'll just set all the data, session data, after the verification. And then what I'm doing is that I'm now, since the session management is not being done by Google, so I have to do the session myself. So I'm just creating a random ID, session ID, and I'm putting the session ID in a hash map, so that, and I'm just setting the same session ID in the cookie. So when the next time the request comes, I'll fetch the same session ID from the cookie, and then I'll get the data from my hash map. Instead of hash map, you can even go ahead and implement things in the Redis. But since again this is not my focus here, that's why I'm putting things in hash map. So I'm putting the, session ID as a key, and the session, all the information like user information, all those things in the value. But generally I have seen people putting these information in the Redis. So that's for the session management. But since here we are just talking about the authentication, so just put it wherever you want. I'm putting in the hash map. So this is how you can get things done in the HTML controller. And then what I'm doing is that, once I'm verified everything, I'm redirecting the person to the home page. So the home page, what exactly is the home page? I'm redirecting the user to a slash home URL, which is this controller. So here I'll return a different HTML page, which is this one, the home page here. And here in the home page, again I'm just showing bunch of information to the user, nothing else. In fact, I can remove the script here. I don't need this script here. I don't need tag here, only the body. So here the things will be redirected. So I hope the things are clear, that you have the backend code where you redirect to the home page after the logging in. And these are just a model, basically the models which come to us, not very important, but the thing which is important is this session data which is there. Okay, so now I think we are clear. In fact, you don't need this cred verification request. I'll just go ahead and delete it. I don't see it being used anywhere. So only the classes which we need is just the HTML controller, session data object, and then the main method to start things. And then we had the home page, that's the after logging in, the login success page, and the login page. So these are the things we need, and already we talked about the login with Google thing. So these are the thing which we need to do. Now what I'll do is that I'll just start my project from here, and then we'll see the flow overall. So I have started my Spring Boot project, starting it very simple. And now I'll go to my Google Chrome. So I'm here in my Google Chrome. It's important to go to the network tab to, see a few interesting stuffs which would happen here. So I'll reload my page, and then let's see what happens. You see, sign in with Google comes here. And what I can do is that I will actually, so this is the HTML page which I created earlier, right? I'll click on continue as Anubhav. So if I do that, basically the login is verified, and then the call goes to the backend, and then the backend verifies everything, and then it returns the home page to me. So you see the number of calls which are done. This is the redirection which happened, and the first one was of course logging in with Google. And then there were three pages which were shown. The first page of course was the HTML login page. Let me show you again how many pages get rendered overall. So let's start with HTML login page. So this is the page number 1. then you get logged in, and then you have this HTML callback, that's a redirect. In the redirect, you see there is this credential sent by Google and the token, and this token has a this token value in the payload, and the same value is being sent in the cookie as well. So this value is same as the payload value. So this is how it is being verified that the values are correct, and you need to verify that in the backend. And then you verify this value and this value, they both must be same. So here the value is C2 something, and here in the cookie value also you see C2 something. So these values are matching, and then this is the home page. So bunch of redirections, but overall you were able to see the login successful page. So this is information about me. So these are the information which gets downloaded as a part of this login with Google. And I think for as a company, this much information is enough for you to create an account. If you need more information, then there are a little complex flows, but I'll discuss about them later. So yeah, I think I was clear about the login with Google. The only downside of this particular flow is that there are a bunch of redirections, and sometimes you don't want it. Sometimes you want that, or you would have seen in many e-commerce website, right? So in those cases, you don't even have to refresh the page. That is, the refreshing happens in the same page. But I will not cover that flow in this particular video. I think this video is enough to help you understand the overall flow. The next video I'll create, which will have the same page refreshing, that is, you will not even have to refresh the page, but I'll cover that in the next video. But I hope this video was clear to you to understand the overall flow. What are the various components needed? That is, you need the Google Cloud account, and then you need a backend API, and then you need a simple HTML page. There is one more important thing which is not much talked about, but it is very important, that what happens after you log in. How do you access the data once the login is done? So for that, now, since whichever request you make, if you see your request here, let me clean up everything and refresh it. And whenever you make any call to the backend, so you can see in the cookie, this session ID is added. So this session ID is added in the backend when the login was successful. Now, when the request goes to the backend, in the backend, what will happen is that in this home controller, what I do is that with the help of the same session ID from the cookie, I'll try to get the session data. So session data would already be stored in my backend. So I don't have to do anything here. I just need to store that session data by session ID, which is a string. So basically a key value pair. Just you can use Redis or in memory, whatever you want. I don't care. So in all the requests, this session ID will come as a cookie value, and then for those cookie values, you can give the responses. So it's a very simple thing. Let me show you as a debug mode also, but I think we are clear. But let me just run it as a debug. So when I do this, then the request will come to the home controller, and then from the home controller we can get the data. So when you refresh it, you can get some session ID. So since I restarted things just now, so it will not have any session ID, but you get the idea that you can essentially get the session ID, and you can essentially use the session ID in all the controllers. Some people use interceptor and all those things, but the idea is simple, that you can get the things from the cookie value and then use them directly. So yeah, that's it. I think you can use these things and have a simple HTML login if you want to, and things will work just fine. So yeah, I hope I was clear in this particular video. I hope I was able to explain you the end-to-end flow and how the login works, and how the cookie is set, and how the redirection works. So all the components can be knit together to understand the flow overall. That's it from my side for this video. I hope you liked this video. If you like it, give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really makes a difference, and it encourages me to make more videos. So that's it from my side for this video. Till the next time, bye.